In 1954, the United States government overthrew the democratically elected president of Guatemala. The reason? He tried to buy back land from a fruit company. And that's just one chapter in a story so dark, it gave us the term Banana Republic. For most of the 20th century, the United Fruit Company didn't just sell bananas, it owned countries. We're talking about a corporation that controlled railroads, ports, entire governments, and the lives of hundreds of thousands of workers across Central America. When people say corporate greed, they are usually exaggerating. But with United Fruit, the reality was somehow worse than any caricature. This is the story of how one company turned exploitation into an empire, and how its legacy still shapes Latin America today. The company started in 1899 when a railroad tycoon named Miner Keith merged his banana operation with the Boston Fruit Company. Keith had already built his fortune on the backs of thousands of workers, many of whom died constructing railroads through Costa Rican jungles. Estimates suggest over 4,000 workers perished, but Keith kept no records of the Caribbean laborers he imported. To him, they were disposable. By the 1920s, United Fruit had become the single largest landowner in Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and Cuba combined. They owned more than 3.5 million acres, but here is the thing that makes your blood boil. They actually cultivated less than 15% of that land. The rest, they just held so local farmers could not use it. This forced people to work on United Fruit plantations for poverty wages because they had no alternative. It was economic strangulation disguised as business. The company built entire company towns where workers lived in company housing, shopped at company stores, and were paid in company scrip that was worthless anywhere else. Imagine working 12-hour days in 100-degree heat, cutting bananas with a machete, knowing your children would likely do the same because United Fruit made sure no other opportunities existed. In 1928, Colombian banana workers went on strike. They wanted basic things: 1 day off per week, actual currency instead of scrip, the right to receive medical care. United Fruit refused every demand. When workers would not back down, the Colombian military, pressured by United Fruit, opened fire on a crowd of strikers and their families in the town of Ciénaga. The exact death toll remains unknown. The Colombian government claimed 9 people died. Witnesses described hundreds, possibly thousands of bodies loaded onto trains and dumped into the ocean. The company had so much power that the US government essentially acted as their private military. When United Fruit's interests were threatened, American Marines showed up. Between 1898 and 1934, the US military intervened in Latin America over 30 times, and United Fruit's business interests were a factor in many of these interventions. They literally had a Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, whose former law firm represented United Fruit. His brother, Allen Dulles, who ran the CIA, had served on United Fruit's board of trustees. So when Guatemala's president Jacobo Arbenz passed land reform in 1952 that would redistribute unused land to peasant farmers, United Fruit did not just lobby against it, they orchestrated a coup. The company launched a massive propaganda campaign in American newspapers, painting Arbenz as a dangerous communist. Never mind that they would be compensated for the land at the value they themselves had declared for tax purposes. United Fruit offered the Guatemalan government $627,000 for over 350,000 acres. The company wanted $16 million. The CIA, with those Dulles brothers at the helm, trained and funded a military force that overthrew Arbenz in 1954. The new military dictator, Carlos Castillo Armas, immediately returned the land to United Fruit. What followed was decades of civil war that killed over 200,000 Guatemalans, most of them indigenous Mayans, all because a fruit company wanted to protect land it was not even using. Workers on United Fruit plantations faced conditions that would be called slavery, if we were being honest. They were exposed to toxic pesticides with no protection. The company used a chemical called DBCP long after it was known to cause sterility and cancer. Thousands of workers across Central America were left sterile. The environmental destruction was equally catastrophic. United Fruit clear-cut millions of acres of rainforest, poisoned water supplies with pesticides, and when the soil was depleted, they would simply move on and destroy elsewhere, leaving behind ecological dead zones. The term Banana Republic, which we throw around casually now, was coined specifically to describe countries where United Fruit had corrupted the government so thoroughly that the entire nation existed to serve corporate interests. These were not failed states. They were conquered territories where the conqueror wore a business suit instead of a military uniform. Eventually, United Fruit became so toxic they had to rebrand. In 1990, they changed their name to Chiquita Brands International, hoping people would forget. But changing your name does not change your history. Chiquita was later convicted of financing right-wing paramilitary groups in Colombia, paying over $1.7 million to organizations designated as terrorist groups by the United States. In 2024, a United States court ordered Chiquita to pay $38 million to families of people murdered by these paramilitaries. The legacy is not just historical. The inequality United Fruit created, the governments it corrupted, the institutions it prevented from developing, these wounds have not healed. Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, the countries where United Fruit operated most aggressively, are still among the poorest and most violent in the Western Hemisphere. Millions of people have fled north trying to escape the poverty and violence, which traces back in part to a company that valued quarterly profits over human lives. So next time you grab a banana at the grocery store, remember it comes from an industry built on stolen land, watered with blood, and protected by governments that valued corporate profits over human dignity. The United Fruit Company showed us what happens when we let corporations become more powerful than countries. They did not just sell fruit, they sold out entire populations for profit. If you found this story as disturbing as I did, hit subscribe because we need to remember these histories before they repeat themselves.